Hello and welcome to our Analytics Breakthrough webinar series. My name is Faris Al-Halou. I'm a co-founder and principal consultant at Enor, and with me on this webinar I have my colleague Eric Fettman, co-author of our book, as well as our analytics trainer and coach here at Enor. Really excited to have you all on our webinar. We've had a number of speakers, and today glad to have Alex with us. Alex, how's it going?
Good. How's everyone doing today?
Great, thank you. So Eric, you want to take it from here?
Sure. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you especially to Alex for joining us today as our special guest and our contributor to Google Analytics Breakthrough. Alex today is going to be talking about quick wins and some of the techniques that he has perfected for achieving quick wins. As we see in the bio, Alex has deep experience with conversion optimization for e-commerce and for lead generation. He's really a thought leader in analytics, user interface optimization, the convergence between the two. I know that I've enjoyed listening to Alex and his guests on the marketing optimization podcast, video podcast. I always listen to it in just podcast form, so I didn't see too much, but I heard a lot of good conversations, and we hope to have a good and productive conversation with Alex today. Again, I'm sure that will be the case. So Alex's contribution to the book specifically, actually before we get into that, if we could just do a quick audio check, and we could practice asking questions at the same time. So if you have questions during the webinar, please enter them into the question panel in GoToWebinar. And for right now, we just ask you if we could just do a quick audio check, and in the question panel, if folks could confirm that the audio is coming through, just to make sure that everyone is hearing us okay. Okay, thank you.
It's all good.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, very good. So thank you, Shelby. So with that, quick wins for big results. So this is Alex's contribution to the book, and more broadly, I think we could say what he specializes in. So we'll just go ahead and bring up the book contribution. So here's Alex, quick win for big results. So with that, Alex, please share with us some insights specifically about what the topics that you mentioned in the book, and also just more broadly, how should we approach achieving quick wins, which is something that, even though we all are in an industry in which we have to take a long-term view, we all want to achieve quick wins as well, and not to leave everything in theory. So what's your input on that, Alex?
Yeah, thanks, Eric, and thanks for having me. You know, after doing this for a long time, I always felt like I was trying to massage the data or find the right areas of opportunity. And as I came back to new client work, I continuously found really where to look and how to look at Google Analytics and certain data in the right way, and basically exclude everything else for the time being. But when you first get started and you're looking at fresh eyes at a new site or your own site, really I found that there's a particular pattern of finding where those quick wins, those low-hanging fruit, those biggest areas of opportunity. If you were to make some changes to your website, how would you do that, and where would you actually get started? So in my process through doing conversion rate optimization for the last 17 years, I really started to put together this framework, and I called it, based on my podcast, I called it the marketing optimization system. Really just find make myself sound smart and put a system around it, right? So it was basically a 5-step process: the discovery, hypothesis, execution, review, and scaling process. It really comes down to those 5 steps. You're discovering who your ideal customers really are, understanding the data that you have and the capabilities of what you're collecting, because more than likely you already have the data, you just don't know how to look at it in the right way. Next, from that, you're able to come up with ideas for your hypothesis to figure out what you're actually going to be testing or improving upon. The third step is execution, where you're actually executing and making those changes, testing designs, implementing new ideas. 4 is reviewing, making after you actually test those ideas, you want to make sure they're actually reviewing it and making sure it's actually working well. And then lastly, scaling. Once you have learned and proven that your changes are going to actually work, then you can scale it to increase your overall ROI. But what we're going to talk about mostly today is in the discovery process, really that first step. So finding really those quick wins. And particularly with Google Analytics is great. It's collecting all of that quantitative data for you already. But it really only shows you half the story. It shows you where people are going on the website and potentially what pages that they're visiting, but it really doesn't tell you why. So in the case of Google Analytics, the first place that we start is your top landing pages report. This page is where people visit first, either through paid advertising, SEO, even email marketing, the pages that they're particularly visiting first. And those pages, you can track the conversion rate by each of those pages, the revenue or goals if you have that tracking set up, but also the bounce rate. So it becomes a clear indicator when one of your top landing pages has a high bounce rate and a potentially low conversion rate. That's a key indicator for a quick. Next would be to actually start to look at not only the Google Analytics data, but what is really going on with your website. What are the customers actually doing? Again, Google Analytics tells you where people are going on the website and what pages that they're visiting, but it doesn't actually tell you why. The second part of the analysis is really that qualitative insight. In this case, we use tools like Hotjar, which is a tool that you add to your website, and it will actually watch your visitors go through. You can actually do a behavior analysis by watching visitor recordings, doing heat maps, scroll maps, and also collecting survey data and understanding that voice of the customer through surveys and polls.
Yeah, and we've actually.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that trying to get to the why makes tons of sense, and in fact in our training in our Enor's Google Analytics training, we start with all of the data points that we can pretty objectively obtain from Google Analytics, such as the what and the where traffic is coming from geographically, where your traffic sources are, what your traffic sources are, the actions that people are performing, when they perform them. Our job as analysts is to try to get to the why. It's not always achievable, but we think we always want to strive to get there. And really, ultimately, all of the quantitative data that we are deriving from Google Analytics should help to build towards the why, and bringing in the qualitative, more of the qualitative data from tools like Hotjar. I think, if we're looking at like heat map and scrolling and want to get more input from you on that, Alex, what your favorite reports are in the qualitative, in a tool like Hotjar. I think it's a little bit of a mix when you're looking at a heat map report. I think it's maybe a little bit of a mix of qualitative and quantitative, and then you have survey tools which are purely qualitative that can help you build the why. But can you talk a little bit more about how you use the heat mapping and the supplementary types of reports to complement the quantitative data in Google Analytics?
Sure. When you're looking at, starting with, Google Analytics, you look at your top landing pages report. So the pages that are getting the most traffic directly, where you can actually see those conversion rates. And you start to, break it down. Okay, excluding the homepage is probably going to get a lot of traffic. But what are those 2 or 3 other top pages that people are visiting? Maybe it's your About Us page. Maybe it's a top product or a top category. If it's e-commerce, it's your cart or checkout process. So you want to, first of all, identify those most important pages. Then you start to run that qualitative insight on those individual pages. So in the case of a tool like Hotjar, you can run visitor recordings and heat maps. Starting with because we can analyze that data, but from a numbers perspective, but really all we're doing is making assumptions. We don't really want to assume that we know what the customer is really doing. How can we put these layers of analysis to understand what they're really doing in this way? So the first way we would do it, we would set up those user recordings. We would actually watch them go from page to page to page to see how far that they're scrolling down. Maybe there's some potential conversion blockers that are stopping them from getting to those next pages.
Alex, how do you approach viewing the individual recordings? Because I think that some of us who are used to looking at data in aggregate struggle a little bit with how to go about approaching individual recordings. Same thing almost with the user report within Google Analytics, where you could see on an anonymous but user by user basis the sequence of interactions that a user generated. I think that sometimes there's more of a challenge in interpreting those types of reports than just seeing the quantitative data in aggregate. So what is your recommendation on usefully consuming those types of reports? Is there any kind of threshold you have to look at, a minimum number of recordings, or do you look at recordings till you start to see patterns? How do you approach that?
Yeah, it really is that latter. You really nailed it right there. With Hotjar is has a lot of tools in it, but I would still call it somewhat of a basic tool. You still have to manually go through and actually watch a lot of recordings to see patterns of user behavior. And you can certainly do filtering, where you can filter through recordings. Let's say you only want to watch recordings that have received more than 2 or 3 page views, or you only want to watch recordings that are on mobile, or you only want to watch recordings that are longer than 30 seconds or longer than a minute. So you can filter down and exclude all the unnecessary recordings that you don't want to watch. So I'll certainly use their filtering system to find the ideal recordings that you're really looking for. And then, of course, you want to think about what the ultimate goal is. In e-commerce, it's pretty clear. You want them to check out. So if someone's going and visiting a category page and then going to a product page and then to cart in the checkout process, if you can watch that pattern over and over across literally hundreds of recordings, you'll start to it become pretty obvious where people are getting hung up in that checkout process. It could be something as simple as they don't understand how much shipping is going to be, or they're having problems entering their promo code, or they don't believe the date that a product is actually going to be delivered to their home. So you could start to come up with a laundry list of potential ideas. It's really just an idea generator for your hypothesis.
And Alex, I'm sorry, you may have mentioned this, but is there, in your experience, is there any, like, typically how many individual recordings would you have to go through? I know it can vary, but before you could start to see a pattern, just if someone is embarking on viewing individual recordings, how many should they expect to have to go through till they start deriving insight?
It is going to be difficult to nail a number. Obviously, larger sites are going to have a lot more recordings, and smaller sites are going to have less. So I would say we'll start to see patterns after 30 to 50 recordings. But ideally, you want to be able to watch a scenario of potentially around 100 recordings at a time. I mean, you can put those recordings, advance them and speed them up to make them go quicker and then filter them down. But yeah, I would say a good number is probably around 100 recordings to watch.
Okay, so you should be prepared to put in a few hours at least until you start.
Oh yeah, it's very time consuming. There are more advanced qualitative tools also that do automate this process, which a lot of advances in this space particularly. We used to have to do this all manually back in the day where we have to rent the equipment and rent out labs, but nowadays there are also particular tools where they'll automate these patterns of user behavior and then do alerts with those particular flags. You guys hear me okay?
Hello, Eric, did we lose you?
Might have lost Eric.
Oh, we might have lost Eric. Oh, no.
I'll keep on going with the...
yeah, go ahead, yeah. I have all, but go ahead, Alex, yeah.
Oh, just, continuing on that, aside from visitor recordings, there's also many different tools within the Hotjar set. There's heat maps, which are great because obviously once you figure out what is going on with a particular page, which is the high traffic page, then you can run heat maps on it. Heat maps are somewhat, effective to where people are clicking and what they're doing, but it becomes pretty clear what's important when more people are clicking on a certain section of your web pages. If everyone is going to your page and just clicking on login, that's okay. You can potentially exclude those login clicks and then figure out what's those next areas. A great example is the footer. A lot of websites don't pay enough attention to their footer. So if users can't figure out where they want to go in the main navigation in the top links, they'll go down to the footer and they'll click on those links. So you can start to really understand what your users are looking for by figuring out what links users are clicking on in their footer. Also, right, with the heat maps, you can also do scroll maps. Scroll, so you can figure out how far people are scrolling down. So if you have a lead generation website, potentially if you're doing one of those video backgrounds or a very big slider at the top, and users aren't scrolling down to the main content, that could be a very big issue. And just by making that hero panel a little bit smaller, less tall, then you could potentially improve your conversion right there as well.
Right, and thanks, Alex. One of the things you mentioned earlier, in terms of sort of at a higher level, you said one of the first things we look at is we look at the top landing pages, right? And I think a lot of, especially for beginners, you get Google Analytics set up, you follow best practices, you have data, you trust the data, but now what do I do? So I really appreciate you pointing out, some specific examples where take a look at your landing page report, especially if you're running a lot of paid search and you're driving a lot of traffic to those landing pages. You got to put a lot of attention to that. And I think when we talk about quick wins and big results, we always like to tie it back in terms of the efforts and energy we want to spend in terms of analytics. Take a look at where you're spending money and time. So if most of your marketing dollars are going, you're spending money on AdWords, and they're going to a few landing pages, then definitely follow what Alex mentioned. Take a look at those landing page reports and bounce rates and conversions, and that would be a good start. Are there specific areas? Go ahead.
Well, on some of the specific pages, if you start to see those patterns, one page or your cart or checkout is having problems, you just keep on adding layers to figure out why, and you just keep on peeling back the onion. And one of the ways to do that is when you see that there's a high bounce rate or users are falling off at a certain part in your funnel, then you add polls. Everybody has seen them on the web. When you go to a certain page, you scroll halfway down the page or you're on there for a certain amount of time, all of a sudden a little question survey pops up and asks, what information are you looking for? What's stopping you from completing this purchase? And us as advanced internet users, we're like, oh, no one ever fills those out. People will fill them out, and they'll give you specific feedback, which is that voice of the customer, how people are explaining the problems that they're having on your website, and they become gold. They tell you exactly how to fix the problems in order for you to get more conversions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I remember I was at a conference and one of the speakers in terms of looking at session recording and things that, we're all, I guess we have that curse of knowledge. We know our apps or our sites very well, so we don't spot issues, but users do. In watching this speaker, forgot which company she was with, they actually, in the customer support area, they were getting a lot of complaints about not being able to find the information, support about a specific product, and after watching and there's a quick wins, watching the recording around those pages, and there are a couple of broken links in there, and people just can't get to what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a very IT intensive fix. It just make sure you have the right link and make sure the customers are satisfied.
Yeah, it's amazing. Even with advanced QA and automated customer experience testing, it's very difficult to find all the problems. But once you start watching all those recordings, all of a sudden it becomes, oh, that's low-hanging fruit. Let me fix these links. Users can't find the information that they're looking for. They're having problems getting the right information that may help them, complete the goals on their website. And that's the way you come up with a hypothesis. Then you start to prioritize those. If I make this change to this top traffic landing page and I increase the conversion rate and I reduce the bounce rate by X, that's really where you're going to see those big results. That's why they're quick wins. These are easy changes that you can make to get those big benefits.
Absolutely, yeah. We do have time for questions. I just want to remind our attendees, if you have any questions, we have some here, but if you have more questions, please go ahead and enter them, and we'll get those over to Alex. Just want to check on Eric. Eric, I see you moving the mouse, but we can't hear your audio, so we'll keep proceeding. But
can you hear me now?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I had a little bit of a unexpected update in the middle of the webinar, but I'm back. Thank you.
There you go. You're all upgraded.
It's good there's several of us on the webinar. Alex, even though we're talking more about the discovery phase, a couple of questions for you. For the hypothesis, in your experience, and this is getting into, I guess, a little bit of not controversial territory, but I think we all want to make decisions based on a lot of data sometimes till we get to some kind of statistical significance. But in your experience, when you generate a hypothesis, from when you feel that you've seen enough input for session recordings to generate a hypothesis, in your experience, how often is that hypothesis borne out in the results that follow, and to what has been the degree of improvement in terms of lead generation or e-commerce? So that's one question. Another question is, do you have any recommendations for any additional type of more qualitative input in terms of in-person user testing or an online platform such as user testing or Try My UI? Are there any other qualitative inputs for the hypotheses that you do generate?
Yes, absolutely. To address your first question, I think it's key to come up with a solid hypothesis. I work with a lot of corporations, and a lot of stakeholders have a lot of ideas about things that should be tested. And in order for things to get approved to be tested, we have to generate a good hypothesis. I believe that this is going to happen and it's going to improve this by X. It helps us really prioritize which tests are going to be run and which are going to potentially be the most impactful. As far as how often those win, really during the quick win process, when you have a lot of this low-hanging fruit, a lot of stuff really should win. Eventually, you're going to get law of diminishing returns, and it's going to be harder for your tests to actually make improvement. You're going to get lower conversion improvements. Really, the number, the conversion percentage that you should be aiming for is above 20%. If your conversion test does not win by really more than 20%, if it gets to like 10 or 5 or 6% on a small site, it may not really make a difference to your customers in the long run. Eventually it's going to even out, and it may not actually make a difference. So you really want to aim for really big changes and big improvements. And with those big changes, you're going to potentially get big losses as well. But that's good, because you really, if you don't lose, if you don't fail, you're never going to learn about your customers, what to do and what not to do. So you really want to strive for 20% or more improvements in conversion, and really do that as much as possible until you start seeing losses.
And Alex, once you generate your hypothesis, do you ever go ahead and make the change directly, or does the hypothesis always feed into a test?
No, sometimes we do make the change directly as well. If it's a change that we feel that it just should be changed, essentially best practice, we do what's either called like a time deliverable, or basically a before and after. So we'll make the change to the website, and then we'll track it in Google Analytics as an annotation, and we'll track it over time to make sure it did not make a negative change to the website, that we're ensuring that we're mitigating any loss.
Right, and annotations. I'm personally a huge fan of annotations. Any doubt about any factor that could affect your analytics data, make an annotation.
Mm-hmm. Yep, every change, any new traffic pattern, any new media buy, all these things make a big difference into how companies make money. So the more history over time, obviously, there's going to be many people potentially on your team, so that way they can go in and see that over time, what is that. Related to other ways of doing the user testing, yes, I am actually a really big fan of actually sitting with your ideal customers, not with anybody, not with your mom or your sister or your kids, unless they're like kids apps or something, but really sitting with your ideal customers and then watching them use your website on a desktop or mobile experience or a tablet if that's necessary. Because the more that you talk to your ideal customers and you get inside their mind, and you ask them specific questions about how to find things on your website, and you see the problems that they're having, it trains your brain and just the overall idea to make your website better for those particular customers. Because if you're just doing user behavior and you're watching the visitor recordings, you're only getting one side of the coin. By sitting with your ideal customers and actually watching them go through specific tasks, you could do this not only in person, but you can do it on Skype. You can find people on Craigslist. If you live in this part of the country and you're gendered and you make over whatever a certain amount of money, they're not going to tell you how much money it is, but at least they're somewhat qualified to be a user researcher for you. And that way you can record the entire experience, you can understand exactly what problems that they're having, and also you can see their facial expressions. So
right.
When people squint their eyes, or they move their face towards the monitor, they're having some type of frustration. So you really want to understand what those key innuendos are that they're having, because that's where you discover the friction of the user and what's potentially persuading them not to convert.
That's right, and I think there can be a lot of revelations in just sitting and actually seeing someone's reaction and actually having a conversation with folks as they walk through a process, because I think that there's the law of what's that called, when you're too close to something. I can't the term is
the curse of knowledge.
The curse of knowledge. That's it, the curse of knowledge. And I think that we in the industry think that we are not susceptible to that, but everyone is totally susceptible to that. So you really do need fresh subjective eyes to view whatever process that is. And also in my experience, sometimes even people within your own organization who really understand how processes are supposed to work, but maybe are not involved on the digital end, website or app, but those are the people who really understand how customers are supposed to be served. It can be also very valuable to speak to those people in your organization as well, because I think when you work on the digital end of things in an organization, you think that everyone is paying attention to the digital experience the way you are, but they're probably 90% of the organization may not be, but they still may be able to provide really good input, subject matter experts, customer care experts, those types of folks. I don't know if you've experienced that as well, Alex.
Yeah, I work with a lot of corporations where they have thousands and thousands of employees, and sometimes me as a consultant, I'm like paid to solve problems, right? I go in, I find problems, and I fix them. And people who work there and engineers, they don't like to hear that their software is buggy or it doesn't have the best user experience. So they get tunnel vision. They only see what they see on their desktop at that time. I mean, even if you own your own e-commerce site, how often do you buy your own products on your own website? They never do.
Exactly.
So they get tunnel vision, and they only focused on what that next thing is, and then they want to go home for that day. Us as experts, we see things differently than others, and we find these problems that are really going to help them actually make more money.
Thank you, Alex.
Go ahead,
Eric, we're getting close to the end. No, we're getting close to the end of the webinar. So wanted to see if there's, I think we've got all the questions answered. Any final thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, my background's in really traditional art. I grew up as a graphic designer. I learned Photoshop and Illustrator, and I started building websites. And I learned all of this basically through trial and error, and reading books like the one you guys wrote. That's really what it comes down to. You have to find. Everybody wants that secret answer. How do I make more money on internet? How do I drive more traffic? It's all trial and error. Try to spend as little money as you can. Google Analytics is free. Hotjar actually has a free account too. They're very easy to use and get started. And use that system. Look in your top landing pages. Find the pages that are most important to you. Use that Qualitative Insight to visitor recordings, heat maps, and polls, and you will find exactly where those quick wins are, so you can get big results.
That's right.
Well, thank you again, Alex. Thank you so much. Yes, you gotta. It's lifelong learning, and we figured the web, and then there's mobile, and then now there's a mix of mobile and web. So it's never ending. But hey, otherwise it wouldn't be fun, right?
Absolutely. Always new things to learn.
Yes, absolutely. And it sounds kind of corny, but I truly believe that apart from any tool, there are always new things to learn. There are always new tools, and we all have to have obviously some level of technical and tool knowledge. But the most important thing is to really want to use whatever the tool is to make a difference. If you want to drive better end user experience and you want to generate more value for your organization, you'll find the way to do it. But the desire has to be there. It all has to start with that.
Yeah, they used to tell us in art school, everybody gets the same clay. It's, you know, it's the ones who develop that beautiful sculpture who become famous.
I'm going to add that I love expressions like that. I've never heard that one before. That's going into my bag of sayings. I'll remember that one. Everyone gets the same clay. Thank you so much,
Right.
Alex. Ferris, you want to wrap up?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thanks so much for your time and your insight, Alex. Lots of things to talk about. I know there's a lot more that we could talk about. Maybe at some point we'll be able to talk about the next steps, hypothesis, execution, reviewing, and scaling. We had a lot to talk about just mostly in the discovery phase today. For folks out there, if you want to connect with Alex, visit alexdesigns.com or connect with Alex on Twitter. And stay connected with Ferris and myself and the rest of the Enor team on the Enor blog. We produce a lot of stuff there about Google Analytics Suite and related tools, BigQuery, and Google Analytics Breakthrough Webinar Series. We will have additional webinars coming up. And pick up your copy of Google Analytics Breakthrough today and read Alex's contributions from other folks, and the rest of the content about Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and other tools to help you really get proficiency. We've gotten some very good feedback on the book, and it was recently featured on the official Google Analytics blog. So with that, thank you everyone for your participation, and please let us know if you have any questions. Let Alex know, let us know if you have any questions, and please stay connected.
All right, have a good one. Thanks.